6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our special called meeting for Convention Tourism and Public Entertainment Facilities Committee meeting. We have a agenda before us, and we're going to try and stay on schedule since Budget 101 is right after us. So pursuant to Governor Lee's executive order number 71 regarding electronic meetings, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitute essential business of the Metropolitan Council, and the meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Can I get a second? All right. And then from the committee members that are on, if you are voting in the affirmative, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and voting in the affirmative is Councilwoman Sepulveda, Council Member Hurt, Council Member Van Rees, and Council Member Swope. Am I missing any? No. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We are meeting today to have an update on the convention center and a short presentation, and then we're going to be hearing from Vonda McDaniels, who is the CLC president, and Nora Cooper, who is with ROC Music City, or Rock Music City, and the impact of COVID-19 on workers. So Butch, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? I know many already know you, but for also the viewing audience, and we'll go ahead and start on your presentation.
Sure, thank you. I'm Butch. Sorry.
And Council Member Druffel is on the call. Thank you, Council Member Druffel.
Thank you. I'm Butch Spiridon, President and CEO of the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation. And in response to your request, I am pleased to try to give you a brief update today with regard to the hospitality industry in Nashville and how it has been impacted by this pandemic and our response to that impact. Let me first start by thanking y'all for your recent support of our contract extension. That's a critical component of our efforts to move forward, so very much appreciated. I'd also like to say that I think we are rightfully optimistic that our industry will help lead Nashville's recovery. And I'll try to give you a brief overview of why I am optimistic. First, kind of taking a look at where we are today. Recovery is going to take time and money. No secret, no Einstein comment there. Our industry generated $7.5 billion in direct visitor spending in 2019, and that final number for 2020 has been reduced to about $3 billion. So a $4.5 billion loss in visitor spending just in Davidson County. Hotel occupancy in Nashville is hovering around 30%. And what would usually be a $30 to $32 million annual budget for us will likely end up closer to $10 million this year. In response to that, we have laid off 8 persons, and everybody else on the staff has taken a cut in pay, a cut in benefits, and we have reduced or eliminated almost all contracts that we are involved with that help us execute our responsibilities. We've been resourceful, we've been collaborative, we've been creative, and we've been a little bit lucky. Some of that luck starts with the state's CARES Act grant. We were a recipient of $4.4 million this past fall, which allowed us to prepare a campaign, reimburse ourselves from some COVID-related expenses, and literally prop ourselves up. That was the first bit of relief that we had since last March. After working for 9 months, we were finally eligible for PPP funding in December, and we have received a $1.4 million PPP grant, which has given us a lifeline to get through the spring. We are also on the short list for an Economic Development EDA grant, which would truly be the lifeline for recovery. It's a $1.4 million grant, which requires an 80-20 match, 20 on our part, that is specifically for marketing. Without this grant, and we are optimistic and hope to know any day now, but without the grant, we have very little revenue in the way of marketing dollars. Last thing I'd like to say in terms of funding and available dollars is our membership support has never been more critical, and our members have been renewing at about a 70% rate, which we consider very good, but it is down compared to a normal 90% renewal rate. I would also add that any members that communicate with us, if they cannot pay, we are continuing their membership. We will carry them till such time as they can pay their dues, but we're not cutting anybody off for lack of payment. We all need each other at this particular time. We're making some adjustments to our operations, particular of interest, I think, to you all, our visitor guide and our meeting planning guides. We've made changes to both of those publications. On the visitor's guide, typically we do 2 books a year. This year we are going to produce 1 book. It will be focused on inspirational editorial. We have reduced the quantity that we will print, and we have reduced the advertising rate by 30% for our members to help them lift themselves back up. That book will come out in March and carry us through the end of December. We also produce a meeting planning guide that typically comes out in August. We're delaying that publication to October. We're reducing the ad rates there as well. And we are using that book to target August of 22. So the book will come out in the fall. In August of 22, we will be hosting the American Society of Association Executives annual meeting. You might remember we've hosted them several times in the past, but this book will be our key to boosting their attendance and giving our sales message to over 2,000 meeting planners and association execs. Finally, in terms of operations, we typically have done in-person training. We have repurposed and reproduced all of our training into a hybrid, neighborhood-focused training videos. So I think right now we have about 5 of those done. We will be producing about 10 to cover all of the neighborhoods. And the training becomes particularly important as we look to start rehiring our employees. We know that we're going to be hiring a lot of new faces, in particular in the hotels. I've often used the example of the Omni Hotel. It's had about 600 employees, and they're down to about 40 or 50 right now. So they literally laid off over 500 employees. We have to retrain and re-educate those employees so that they are the best sales ambassadors possible, and we will be doing that with our new videos that we have created. In terms of our planning and marketing and our strategy, we have relied heavily on research and data to guide our decisions. We subscribe to a program of destination analysts, which give us weekly updates in terms of trends. They survey about 1,200 individuals each week in terms of what are they looking for, are they willing to travel, when are they willing to travel, and what kind of messages. The good news is that the response is at its highest level yet, or since the pandemic started, in terms of optimism about travel and much less fear. They are ready to start receiving messages, which is good news for us. And the peak response in terms of when it looks like they're willing to hit the road is July, but we should see ramp up in April, May, and June as well. We have also contracted with Tourism Economics, which is a affiliate of Oxford Economics, to do a long-range market forecast. That shows us getting back to 2019 levels in 2023, but it also shows 2022 being reasonably strong and showing good recovery in the last half of 21, 22 being profitable, and 23 being back to 2019 levels. When I say that about 2023 and comparing to 19, one of the things we have to be prepared for is that about 5,000 more hotel rooms have opened and over 60 new restaurants. So the 2019 levels, as good as they were, have to take into account that much more supply, both in restaurants and hotels. So the occupancy numbers will not be as high, and the average rate will not be as high as we start to build our business back. Speaking of building our business back, we're optimistic because during this entire pandemic, we have never stopped selling. The majority of our peers around the country virtually shut down to save their dollars and wait for recovery. We cut expenses everywhere we could. We literally have cut 60% of our expenses, but we kept our sales team intact. We kept our marketing team intact. We have sold from July to January over 400,000 new room nights for the future. And lead generation is almost back to pre-COVID levels. So first thing we've got to do is get our leads back up, and then we can convert those leads into new business. We took the opportunity to produce a virtual New Year's Eve show this year. Might not make sense for a lot of reasons for people looking from the outside, but we had the opportunity to stream it nationally and internationally, and we brought CNN in for coverage. So we kept the Nashville message out globally, and actually for the first time that we've been producing New Year's Eve, we actually made a little money, which will go into marketing. We also took the New Year's Eve virtual show, and through our UK marketing firm, we hosted a New Year's Day brunch with tour operators and media to watch our New Year's Eve show. Got great response from that. We had at least 10 media members and 10 key tour operators listening in. In mid-January, we hosted a songwriter breakfast virtually for over 300 key meeting planners. And this week, literally this week, we received the seal of approval from the World Travel and Tourism Council's Safe Travel Stamp. It's a program launched internationally. We were one of the first U.S. cities that have been approved, thanks to our Good to Go program that we launched last April. The global designation will help Nashville stand out as a safe destination. We've also continued to work with British Air to return service to Nashville when the travel bans and the travel restrictions are lifted, and we are very optimistic that we will be included when they start service to the U.S. again. We continue to see great accolades from major travel publications, some as recently as this week. We'll share some with you. Nashville is named one of the world's greatest cities for music lovers, no secret, by the London Telegraph in January of 2021. Nashville was included in the UK publication, The Independent, 5 of the best U.S. destinations to visit in 2021. The London Telegraph also named Nashville as one of the 50 wonderful reasons to rediscover America in January of 21. Travel and Leisure's 50 best places to travel in 2021 included Nashville at number 27, and Condé Nast Travelers Reader's Choice Awards named Nashville as number 8 on the best cities in the U.S. All of that PR will help us get our message out. Due to the holiday surges and even going back to fall break and Thanksgiving and Christmas, we have started and stopped our campaign numerous times. At the end of January, we launched again, going back to looking at the research that told us people were ready for inspirational travel messages and had confidence in future travel. We've also been working with the health department at our request and working with Dr. Jahangir. And let me say, he and the staff at the health department have been great to work with in helping us get exceptions or have a process to apply to continue to bring some business in for the future, not that we're doing anything right now. And one of the things they have done is extended the executive order through May, because what was happening up until last month was they could only approve events 30 days at a time, and that did not help our meeting clients. So by getting this 90-day runway in front of us, we've been able to talk to our clients about the opportunity to meet when they feel it is safe, and it looks like we will have some activity starting in June. Some of the other reasons that I am optimistic begins with the SEC basketball tournament in March. There'll be 13 teams here. The SEC Network, ESPN, and ABC will cover that event. We're hopeful there will be some fans, but the fact that we will have TV coverage going out nationally, talking about Nashville, will be very helpful to our efforts. Sorry, I'm page stuck together. The Picasso exhibit at the Chris Museum is an invaluable marketing tool. The first day and a half of tickets on sale, they sold 7,000. A great number of those tickets were out-of-town individuals. While the Rock and Roll Marathon found it necessary to cancel April's event, they will reschedule for the fall. And if you saw this week, the Academy of Country Music announced that they will again bring their awards here in April, and that will be broadcast nationally on CBS. We've been working with the NASCAR Cup race, the Ally 400, which will also have national TV in June at the Super Speedway in Wilson County and on NBC Sports Network. We do not have an update from the CMA on Music Fest yet, but we expect to have that in early March. We saved two major conventions that we're going to cancel in February and March. We moved them to June. One is Tractor Supply, and the other is the American Institute of Steel Technology. We are working with the health department to get approvals by following all of the necessary protocols to host those meetings. And we also saved the National Cattlemen's Beef Association out at Opryland. We moved it to summer as well. Do not know about July 4th yet. The size and the scope of the event will be dictated by the health department and research. We hope to make that decision in March. CMT would like to televise it again. We have talent on hold. We have fireworks on hold from last year. There's nothing we would like better than to host that event as a reopening, but vaccinations and COVID cases will dictate that decision. Later on in July, there's an SRX Superstar Racing Experience. Nashville will host the final race of 6 races, and it will be televised nationally on CBS and held at the fairgrounds. There's a Christian music festival that will take place in Bon Aqua, Tennessee, called Light Fest, the last weekend of July, and we believe we will benefit from the hotel stays. There are not a lot of hotel rooms in Bon Aqua. And then we get to the Music City Grand Prix in August, which will also be televised nationally and will draw international attention and visitation. Those are some of the reasons that we continue to be optimistic. We have great events, great meetings, and great national media coverage that will continue to shine a spotlight on Nashville and substitute for the lack of marketing dollars that we will have. We continue to need to manage expectations. We hope to get to 50% occupancy by this summer and gradually build up from there. We have more convention business in August and beyond, but we also need to be concerned about attendees, their willingness to travel, and their ability to afford to travel. All of those will continue to be factors throughout the rest of the year. We hope to end the year at around 60% occupancy. 2022 should have more normalcy, but being mindful of the new inventory in hotels and the new inventory in the restaurants. Our sales will continue, our ads will continue, and most importantly, over the next few months, we'll be working on our World Cup efforts. We got an update from FIFA last week. We have a virtual presentation on the Titan Stadium in March. We will do another virtual presentation this summer. They hope to make an in-person visit either late summer or early fall. And the latest we have is they will make a final decision on the 10 host cities by fall. I believe we are still in good shape. We're on brand, we're on message, we're on our reputation, we're on our authenticity. We are prepared. We're going to remain flexible. We're praying for the EDA grant, and vaccinations getting out are critical to our success. So let me say thanks for your support. and I am happy to answer any questions. That was a lot in a little bit of time, and I hope that helped.
Thank you, Mr. Spirit, and that was a lot of information. I was taking notes vigorously. Colleagues, will hold our questions until the very end to make sure that we get in our speakers to speak on time, and then we'll take questions for both Mr. Spiridon and Ms. McDaniels and Ms. Cooper at the very end. So hold your questions. Next is Vonda McDaniels, who is the CLC president. She also sits on the board for the convention center. So Vonda, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Council Member Sepulveda, for the invitation to come before the committee today. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm Vonda McDaniel, president of the Central Labor Council. I've also served at your approval on the Music City Board for the last 10 years. I definitely appreciate Butch's report. It is critical to the rebounding of the city. But I do want to raise just a few points. Definitely don't have as long a report as Butch. But I do want to say that we have a couple of affiliates, especially, and then you'll hear from Rock Music City, which has emerged out of the crisis of the pandemic. And I think that they have some really relevant things to say. One of the CLC affiliates, we have roughly 40 representing 20,000 working families in the Middle Tennessee area. IATSE 46 and 492 work in this market, and particularly IATSE 46. The growth in trade shows since the Music City Center opened has almost doubled the size of that local. With the drop in convention and trade show business, most of that local is now out of work. Also, AFM 257, the musicians, which are critical to why, another reason why people want to come to Nashville, and are an important part of the brand of the city, have also experienced virtual total job loss. The impact of the coronavirus beyond the health impacts has been devastating for our members as well as the tourism industry as a whole, with tens of thousands of working people here already bludgeoned by an affordability crisis, now facing uncertain employment futures. We have listened to hospitality workers that often do not have health care and jobs, and it's essential for the safety and well-being of the workers as well as the guests that we serve that are visitors to our city, and the future of the tourism industry, that workers have health care at the time they need it most, and that their livelihoods are protected. With that as a backdrop, we continue to press employers in our city to commit to these employees. We should have real metrics along with the other metrics for our city's success during this downturn around the safety and welfare of workers that contribute to a robust and thriving hospitality industry. But whether or not it delivers for its employees and impacts our community is real and measurable. I, I want to turn it over to Nora to talk about her experience as a hospitality worker. And so I'll hold my comments there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Councilmember Sepulveda.
Thank you, Vonda. Ms. Cooper, you are recognized.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Wanda, so much, and thank you for inviting me to speak. As somebody that I'm a bartender and a server here in Nashville, I've been here since November 2019. It feels really good to be invited into this conversation. One of the things that's definitely been weighing on us in the last year is feeling sort of disregarded and a little bit kind of left to figure things out on our end. So I was asked by Vonda and by Rock to just sort of discuss what it's been like to work in restaurants for the last year. So hopefully I can do that somewhat briefly. There was a period of time where we all were without a job for about just under 2 months. For a lot of us, it was difficult to get unemployment, especially those of us who were newer to Tennessee. Some of us had to wait months for that unemployment to come through, and we didn't have other employment options. When we did get back to work, it was a kind of free for all in terms of figuring out how to handle a pandemic while working in a restaurant. And that was for us and for our management and for our ownership. I got sick in July of 2020. I came into work, I expressed that I wasn't feeling good. And as is typical in restaurants, that was a little bit disregarded. We work when we're sick all the time. Um, so I insisted on getting tested, and I was met with a little bit of friction from my management because we were already short-staffed. I ended up being told to come back to work before getting my test results and then being sent home again. And then I ended up testing positive, which, because of direct contact and that whole situation and the nature of working in a restaurant and that we are always in direct contact with one another, it ended up taking out 3 or 4 or 5 members of our staff for 2 weeks. 4 of our staff members went on to test positive for the coronavirus during that time. And since then, in the last 8 months, we've had a few more members of staff test positive. It wasn't until maybe a month or so after that, and a big push from me and my coworkers with the help of Rock to talk directly with our ownership to get some basic measures for response to a positive test in place in our business. And now that we've had that, some of the resources that we have are 40 hours of sick pay, which I personally burned through the first time I got sick. And as far as I know, there's none of that left for me. So a lot of us are now in this position where we are not incentivized to be honest about how we're feeling. There's a direct conflict between our financial well-being and our physical well-being. And our physical well-being is directly tied to the physical well-being of our customers. Related to tourism and the tourism industry, as bartenders and as servers, we're the people who are largely interacting with tourists. And a lot of them are coming from places that have different restrictions, different mandates, different rules. And we're the ones who are asking them to follow our rules in the city. And it's difficult. We have 17 more things to be thinking about during a shift than we're used to. We're babysitting customers who don't want to wear a mask, who don't understand why there's an 8-person limit in a party, who don't understand why we have to close at a certain time, and they are sometimes angry with us for rules that we didn't choose. And then again, we're in this position where, do I argue with my customer and sacrifice my wage, my pay for that interaction, or do I let them do what they're going to do so that I can know that I'm going to be able to pay my bills? A lot of us are in the age bracket where we would be eligible for the vaccination at the very end of the line. And none of us, I shouldn't say none of us, but most of us don't have health insurance. And a lot of us who would be able to qualify for health insurance maybe under normal conditions, which is usually for restaurants if you've worked full time for a year, are now not eligible to do that because none of us have been able to work full time at any one job because our hours have been cut. Our staffs have been cut. We don't have as many options for seeking other employment. So we're excited about the prospect of tourism booming because that's good for business, but we're also uneasy about it because for the last year we've been dealing with tourists who sometimes are combative with us about the rules, and a lot of us have been in this weird headspace where in order to get through a shift and in order to get through a day, we have to sort of be thinking what's good financially, what's good for our health, and kind of try to navigate that and figure it out on our own with very, very few resources and very much feeling like nobody is looking out for us and nobody cares about us at a government level, at a state level, at a nationwide level, just sort of feeling like, I said this before once I was asked to speak, that we feel like we're bartending on the Titanic, and that would be fine. And I would do that. I would do that if I knew I had a lifeboat. Happily, happily, I might add. We like our jobs. We like doing this. We like being representatives of a city that we care about and that we are happy to be in. And we like representing it to our customers. It's exciting and it's fun and it's a job that a lot of us take a lot of pride in. But for the last year, it's been very scary and a really heavy burden to bear. And most of my coworkers and most of my friends in the industry that I've talked to just feel deflated and have kind of shut down a little bit. And we don't really know where to turn and we don't really know what to do. And organizing with Rock, getting the attention of our ownership, in my personal case, we were able to sit down and have a lot of meetings with our ownership, and it was really fruitful. My COO was in the other day helping us wash dishes and helping us run food, which I've never seen him do before. So there is a hopeful nature to organizing, but the bottom line is, for me and for most of the people that I talk to, is that if we're promoting tourism and if we're excited about tourism, we would like to have some resources and some protection as workers who are going to be dealing with a much higher volume of people every day, and often people who aren't following the rules immediately or just because they don't know what they are necessarily. So we're worried, and we're happy to be a part of the conversation, and we would like to be a part of the conversation going forward. Again, thank you so much for having us here. But yeah, that's sort of, at least for me and from the people that I've talked to, we're happy to be doing it. We need help. We need help.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Nora, for speaking to us today and telling us about your experience and your colleagues' experience in the hospitality industry. Vonda, I think you wanted to see if Hayden Smith wanted to speak briefly.
In the interest of time, I think we'll just go to questions. That's
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, with that, colleagues, I will open up the floor for questions. First hand I see is Councilmember Van Rees.
Yes, I had a question for Butch and the CBC. What happens if you do not get the grant? And how confident are you? And what's your plan B?
Great question. So we are, I think, reasonably confident. We know we have made the short list of applicants, and as recently as last week, they asked us for the city is a co-applicant with us, and they asked us to verify that one more time. So Metro Finance sent an email in support of our grant. So better than 50-50, but until we hear it and see the money, we're proceeding like we won't have it. I think the next step would be we turn to our partners and see what kind of private sector money we can raise. We probably will do that anyway, but it becomes much more paramount. And the biggest challenge with that is nobody has any available marketing revenue. Everybody's on a shoestring right now. So we will, in addition to seeing if we can co-op some programs, we will rely more heavily on our PR efforts, our promotion, and our social media, which we're going to rely on anyway, but it becomes more important and more pertinent.
And just as a follow-up question, when will you know?
Well, I'm chuckling because they keep moving the goalpost or the goal line, if you will. Literally, we're waiting any day, but we were supposed to know in the fall, and then Election Day, and then Thanksgiving, and then January 1. But we're most optimistic that we have been that the answer is imminent.
Fantastic. Thank you for the update.
I'm sorry, I just want to add that yesterday we asked Senator Haggerty if he would look into it for us as well, and he said he would.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I would ask you to go ahead and add to your list of things. Of course, Nashville Pride is scheduled for September, and with it being an autumn event and everyone anxious, I am assuming it's going to be a regional event, probably one of the largest ones we have over at the Bicentennial Mall this year. Thank you.
We have been in contact with them, I think this week, either the end of last week or the first of this week, and we will be working with them. And I tried to stop in August in terms of big events, so I apologize.
Great. Thank you, Council Member. Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your presentations. I have a couple of, a question and a comment. And but you had mentioned that you all cut expenses by 60%, and I'd like to know what that looks like in dollars. I really want to congratulate you for the leadership that you've taken, how you kept communicating with the community in regards to tourism, the steps that you took in terms of reducing hours and cutting salaries to lead by example. I think that was very honorable of you, and as well as your employees, to make sure that your department definitely represented what the city should do in situations such as this. So I'd like to know how much that looks like, that 60% looks like in the savings or the cutting of the expenses. First off.
Well, I thank you for your comments and your kind words. We felt like the most responsible thing we could do was take the same kind of hit that our industry is taking. So we share the pain. We trimmed about $7 million from last fiscal year. So at the end of March, with 3 months left, April, May, and June, we cut $7 million, and that was a little harder. Heading into the new year, we took a $32 million budget and we trimmed it down to what we hoped would be around 12 million. That looks like it's going to come in closer to 10 million. So over $20 million reduction in normal expenses, activity, ads, sales, marketing, you name it, including payroll, but roughly $20 million.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, I was just wondering, as it relates to ROC and the concerns that they have, because they've reached out to me very early on in this process, if some of those CARES Act fundings that was recently brought back and put into reserve, is it possible that those funds might be available for some use that may be able to help them individually and maybe even collectively as a group?
I know that we as a body voted to allocate the remaining funds to specific buckets. We did add more for rent, mortgage, and utility relief, and small business relief. So we did add to those buckets. So I guess we would need to check with the finance office and see how much of those funds are left. We do receive reports on a periodical basis, so we'll need to double check and see if there are any more of those funds left. I guess the question for Ms. Cooper and would be if her and her colleagues, if Ms. Cooper, if you and your colleagues were aware that we had these funds available for you all.
Councilmember Sepulveda, Councilmember Druffel, this is Rosie. Councilmember Druffel can't get on the internet, so he's having some issues, so we want to let you go.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. Ms. Cooper.
Yeah, I'm more involved with rock than a lot of my coworkers are, and than a lot of other industry folks are. I'm not aware of what's available to me, and I know that most of the people in restaurants right now, at least that I've interacted with, are not aware of what resources we have available to us. We have individual different situations with our management and with our ownership. And beyond that, yeah, I don't think that we are. I think that a lot of us just sort of are kind of shooting in the dark, hoping we don't get sick or feel sick.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hurt, we'll follow up with the finance office and Mary Jo and see how much of those funds are left.
And that would be great, but this is some of the concern that I had when I spoke about how some small businesses and some people were aware and had access to it where others were not. And many of them just fall through the crack. And, you know, it's, you try to get to as many as you can, but you miss them. And somehow or another that needed to be open to more small businesses and more individuals. So, I mean, you're right about the rent, because people can get assistance for rent, back rent, and even some future rent, as well as mortgage assistance from Metro Action Commission. And I would encourage them to follow up with that. And I don't think there are any requirements in terms of salaries, just as long as I'm sure with the impact that COVID has made with that. So I just wanted to bring attention to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and you're right. There wasn't enough funds for everyone, and that's certainly something that we would have loved to have. We probably didn't do that great of a job of getting the word out, obviously, with what's available. So I'll follow up with Mary Jo Wiggins and get a response to the committee. Let me see if there's any other hands. If not, I have a couple of follow-ups. Okay. Ms. Cooper, your testimony of conditions for hospitality industry workers is impactful, to say the least, and a little worrisome. Have you, in your experience working with ROC, have you seen Metro Health interact enough with business owners to provide guidance for their business? I know that we had specific guidelines for them, but are we missing something that we probably need to be a little bit more interactive with communicating with business owners to make sure that their workers have healthcare guidelines.
I remember in the summer when our restaurant was having a lot of, relatively a lot of positive cases, and Metro Health was following up to do contact tracing. I know at least 3 of my coworkers and some of my coworkers' roommates and friends were alerting Metro Health to problems just in my restaurant specifically, and those were never followed up on. I have no doubt that it's been a very heavy load to bear for everybody involved, from the top down. I have a lot of sympathy and a lot of empathy because we've all been carrying 5 times as much as we usually would. But in terms of a simple answer, I think it would be if there's a way that we could have an ongoing line between restaurant workers, be that through ROC or any kind of mechanism, and Metro Health and the council in some form or another, to ensure that people know what their rights are and what to do if they need assistance, if they don't know what's going on, if they don't know what's available to them. I think finding a strategy for that would be really important, because I don't know if I can identify a specific place where, something has fallen through the cracks. It's just the impression that I have, and the impression that I have from most of the people I've talked to in the industry, is that just none of us know what to do or who to turn to if we have questions, or what to do if we see things going wrong. And the usual routes of talking to our management, talking to Metro Health, if that's the case, it just seems like it doesn't go anywhere. And so a lot of us have kind of given up on trying to improve anything. So yeah, I don't know if that's a helpful answer, but I hope something in there is useful.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Cooper. Mr. Spiriton, do you provide guidance for hotel workers and hotels and restaurant management, or any of anything that comes in contact with your office? Is there, or is it Metro Health who mainly has been the one communicating?
I would say it's a combination. It's certainly not our primary, I'll say, responsibility, but we've been doing at least a couple times a week, and during the peak of the pandemic, daily updates, and a big part of our updates were communications we were getting from health. We also established the Good to Go program to try to teach the businesses how best to perform and the right protocols, and we were guided by Vanderbilt Health in terms of the protocols that we established. The last thing I would say is anybody, whether it was an owner, a manager, or an employee, if they've reached out, we have tried to provide either the resource, the guidance, or the answer to the best of our ability. So we are happy to serve that role as well. And I would say, I don't know that we have anything left now, but we also distributed about $3.5 million in additional relief to employees themselves to try to find some help. And we did that at a time when we didn't have any money either.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Spiriton. There's certainly a lot to unpack with both presentations today, and we are running very short on time. We have 4 minutes before Budget 101. So I will see if there is one last question or one last comment by either parties. I don't see any hands. Colleagues, I have planned to reach out to more groups that are under our purview, and so we'll expect more specific meetings dealing with the hospitality industry and tourism as we continue, since we are in a pandemic, and we have to plan and see where we could help. So I'll follow back up with the committee on response from Ms. Wiggins, Mr. Spiriton, Ms. Cooper, Ms. McDaniels. Thank you all for being here today, for giving us an update and educating us and making us aware of issues that we are dealing with as a city and as a business and as a worker. So I appreciate everyone for being here today. And with that, we'll adjourn this committee. Thank you all.
Thank you.